Okay. Well, good afternoon. My name is Brian Anderson, and I'm from Sacramento, California, and I'm a cancer survivor. Back about 10 years ago, my doctor at Kaiser Permanente in Sacramento was a little concerned about my PSA count going up, and he suggested that I should have a biopsy, which I wasn't especially looking forward to, but thought it was probably a good thing to have the prostate cancer checked. So I did that, sat down with the urologist, expecting him to say, "Brian, it's benign and you can go home." To my great shock, he said, "You are a 7 on a Gleason score of 10. And I said, "Doctor, I don't even know what the Gleason score is. Explain that to me." He said, "Well, we take 10 samples of your prostate, 5 on the right side, 5 on the left side. 7 of them are cancerous." And I said, "Well, that's not too good, is it, doctor?" And he said, "Well, no, it's not. What should we do?" And he said, "Well, we've got several choices. You can have chemotherapy, you can have radiation. Unfortunately, your prostate is too large, so you can't do seeding, but you could also have an operation." And I said, "Doctor, none of those choices sound real good to me. So I think I'm going to get a second opinion or a third opinion, maybe a fourth or a fifth." Now, the good news out of all this was that I said, "Is there anything else you can tell me, doctor?" And he said, "Well, yes, it's a slow growth cancer." And I said, "Well, you don't have a crystal ball, but if you did, how many years possibly would I live?" And he said, "Usually about 10 years. I said, "Okay, thank you very much." I drove on home, called up my good friend Margaret Walt, who's a nurse for Kaiser Permanente, and I said, "Margaret, last year you told me you went to a wonderful conference down in Southern California, and it was, I think, a national conference just on cancer. Did you come across anything that had to do with just prostate cancer?" And she said, "Yes, I did." And I said, "Margaret, you keep great records. Why don't you check back? Give me a call." 15 minutes later, she was back on the phone and said, "There's this thing called POLY MVA. I don't know much more about it, but I do know it works with prostate cancer." I called down, left a message with a man named Gary, whom I'd never met, and he called me back the next day, and I said, "Gary, here's my situation." He explained a little bit about poly, and I said, "Is there anybody else across the whole United States that's currently taking poly that has prostate cancer?" He said, "Yes, there are several people." "Good. Could I talk to one of them?" "Oh, yes." So he gave me 3 names. One was in Texas, one was up in West Virginia, and one was in Birmingham, Alabama. And that gentleman's name was Michael Mascari. And we just had the best chat. He explained what he was doing with poly, and I said, "That's good enough for me." I called up, got on the Quality of Life program, which is wonderful. What they do is they track you for a month at a time, how much poly you've used, what time of the days. You send the sheet in. They do that same thing for 12 months, and they get a good record of how you've used the poly and the quantities. It's a terrific program. So a year later, I have a new doctor, a new urologist, and they both said, "Look, your PSA is still going up a little bit. Maybe you ought to have a second biopsy." And I said, "Well, I don't really like that idea because it's no fun, but probably we should check." So I had the second biopsy. The results came back. Instead of being a 7 on the Gleason score, it was only a 5. And the doctor could not believe that. He sent that back 2 times to the lab, said, "You must have the wrong Anderson, or you made a mistake, got some things switched." They said, "Nope, this is who he is." So the doctor said, "I don't understand. You're not doing anything." I said, "Doctor, I'm not following your protocol, but what I'm doing is positive attitude, proper diet, physical exercise, lots of prayer, and poly MVA." And his answer was, "Whatever you're doing, keep on doing that." That was 9 years ago, and so now every single day I take 2 teaspoons of poly just before I go to bed at night, usually just with water. Sometimes I use it with apple juice, and that's all I've done. And it's just been really a wonderful thing for me. And so I want other people to know about it. So all the years since, I've come down to that very same conference that Margaret went to and donate 3 days of my time, pay my own travel expenses, my own lodging, and all that, just to be at the Poly booth and tell others about what Poly has meant for me, my own personal testimony. And then in addition to that, on Sunday afternoon, the Cancer Society allows survivors, of which I'm one, to share our testimony for a minute or two to the whole group, and that's just been terrific. So I just highly recommend people checking out POLY MVA, and it's available to anyone that wants to use it, and it's not just limited to prostate cancer, because we have people who had brain tumors, they've had problems with obviously their breast cancer, other kinds of cancer, and POLY works in all of those. So thank you all for listening, and check it out on the web, and POLY MVA may be something that you or your relatives could use. Thank you for listening.